Barnes & Noble Audio.
Getting your life back is reclaiming your ability to empathize with other people.
I'm Miwa Messer from Barnes & Noble. An American Marriage is Tayari Jones' extraordinary fourth novel. It's a page-turning love story with a powerful political backstory. This is much a story about family and race, expectation and desire, loyalty and loneliness, as it is a story about how easily the American dream is derailed for Black men and women, derailed by simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, derailed by respectability politics, derailed by a justice system uninterested in equality. An American Marriage is the best kind of art, thoughtful and provocative, loving and compassionate, grounded in the world. This novel is a perfect balance of character and social commentary, story and emotional truth. How did this book start for you?
Well, about 5 years ago, I wanted to try my writing on a bigger canvas. My earlier books had been kind of closely contained family stories, and I wanted to really wrestle with the issues of our day. So I wrote a fellowship application, and I was accepted to Harvard to do some research on the wrongful incarceration. And so I went there and I did all this research. I read The New Jim Crow probably 100 times. I read oral histories. I watched documentaries. And I was outraged, but I wasn't inspired. And so I was really frustrated because, the Harvard people had given me this opportunity. The time was ticking on my time there, and I didn't have anything to show. Then I went to Atlanta to visit my mother, and while I was there, I overheard a couple arguing in the mall. The woman was beautifully dressed. The man, he looked fine. She looked great. And she said to him, "Roy, you know you wouldn't have waited on me for 7 years." And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. This wouldn't have happened to you in the first place." And I didn't know him. I didn't know her. But I knew she was probably right. He probably wouldn't have waited on her 7 years.
Right.
But he was right that this likely would not have happened to her. Mm-hmm. And for me, I know I have a novel when both characters have a point.
Who showed up first, then, of all your characters? I mean, Roy and Celestial are the heart of the book, but their parents are part of this book? Their college friend, childhood friend, best man at their wedding is part of this book?
Well, there are a lot of people in this book. Celestial and Roy showed up first. And she showed up first for me. She and I have a lot in common. We're both from Atlanta. We both graduated from Spelman College. We both have eccentric fathers, although my father is not a self-made millionaire. My father is a self-made PhD, which is a different creature. But I still grew up with this idea of a father who had invented himself. And so she came first. But then once Roy showed up, I was intrigued by him and a little bit charmed. He's kind of a rascal. I feel like in the beginning he's such a rascal, but then once he is wrongfully incarcerated, it raises him. Because I think before he's wrongfully incarcerated, he's her new husband. Their relationship has some problems, but it looks like it's going to be okay. But once he is incarcerated, then he becomes almost symbolic. He becomes the Black man, when before he was Roy, the individual. And so I was really throughout wrestling with making sure that even though in society's mind the characters had become symbolic, but that in the story, they were still their individual selves.
And everyone has an opinion about Roy's situation. Celestial's dad has an opinion.
Well, everyone has the same opinion about his situation.
Yes.
Everyone knows that it's terrible what happened to him. And this is part of what was causing me problems when I was trying to write it at first, because wrongful incarceration it's wrongful. And I couldn't find a conflict that I could wrestle with there. It was just so clear. So, but what everyone has an opinion on is Celestial and Roy's marriage. And there are lots of legitimate yet different takes on that.
There's a lot of correspondence between Celestial and Roy that reveals quite a lot, which is a terrific device. And then towards the latter parts of the book, you're really just letting everyone tell their story.
Well, I write letters. I have some letters in my purse right now that I have to take to the mail on my way out. And with the plot with Roy being in prison, that's one of the few plots left, modern plots, where the people can write letters. As a person who writes letters all the time, I will tell you people do not write back.
It's true. It's absolutely true. It's a drag, but
yes.
It's true.
So that was part of it, just I had such joy in writing their letters, and and he's in prison, and that makes sense. But the multiple points of view came about later. I kind of originally wanted it to be all Celestial story, but because I like the idea of her as this non-conforming woman, I'm a Southerner, and the non-conforming woman is the mainstay of Southern literature, but her story wasn't the whole story, and so I rewrote it from his point of view. And it was good. Everyone seemed to like it because I think the man in trouble is the bedrock of literature. There's a man in trouble and we must help. But it also felt like I was writing a story that had already been written. It kind of felt like the Odyssey almost. He's in prison trying to get out, come home, wants a faithful woman. And I read that in high school. So I decided to merge their stories, and it was better. Then I decided I don't think this is a spoiler. We have to say his name.
Okay.
I had to add Andre, who is Celestial's childhood best friend. They've known each other so long, they used to take a bath in the sink when they were babies. And now their relationship has evolved because, life goes on, love goes on. And I wanted Andre to have a chance to weigh in as well.
All of your characters, though, have very... I don't know quite how to describe it. I don't want to say father issues. It's not that. They all have...
Complicated fathers.
Complicated dads.
I'm close to my father, but I have 4 siblings, and it's like we have 5 different fathers. I've always been intrigued in all my work at the ways that fathers can change gears in a way that mothers, I think, tend to be more consistent. And so that was interesting. And then also... I was having a little bit of fun. I had a lot of fun, actually, with those dads because they're all a little bit eccentric, but also so many different types of African-American fathers.
Right.
Like the narrative is that Black fathers don't exist.
Right.
And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them.
With a lot of love for their children who are very involved in their children's lives and have definite opinions about the decisions their children are making.
Yeah, they have a lot of opinions. They're dads, they have a lot of opinions, and they, I would say all of them mean well. I don't know how well they do. And we really can see the generational conflict between the fathers and their children. Each of them has a distinct idea on how their kids' lives should look. Each of them feels that being from a previous generation, they suffered so much and their children have a cakewalk life. So all of that was really fun to wrestle with. And also on some levels, this is a book about masculinity. And so... bring on the dads.
Right. Was there anything that surprised you while you were writing An American Marriage?
Everything surprised me writing An American Marriage. I've never been one of those writers who say, you don't choose the story chooses you. I've always been more of a pragmatic writer. Like I set out to write the story, I work on it. But this story really humbled me, and I had to let it find its own way. And I've never been that writer. I've always found it disempowering to feel that the book has a mind of its own, like it's driving and I'm just a passenger. I've never liked that idea, but this time I had to really chase this story and search for it. It was in control. But the thing that surprised me most would be, I can't talk about it, but the ending surprised me most. I did not know. It took me about a year to write the last 50 pages or so because I did not know how these 3 people who are in love and in trouble, I did not know how they were going to work this out. I didn't know if it could be worked out. I thought perhaps I had created a conflict that I could not solve. And I had to just let it go until it came back to me.
How did you end up juggling this cast? How did you end up juggling all of these points of view without losing sight of what you were trying to do?
It was really difficult. I have about 4 or 5 friends, and they're my beta readers, and I have them read it as I go. And I was surprised at their opinions were as strong as the characters mostly about what Celestial should do. Should Celestial be a faithful wife? Is Celestial entitled to her own freedom, her own life? And I was surprised at how strongly, these people are not real.
Right.
They're real in my imagination, but people were, and that both helped me and hurt me in the writing because, of course, if a good friend of yours is enraged by your characters, it makes you want to change the characters because you're your friend and you feel away. But at the same time, it helped me better understand what Celestial herself was going through, facing so much opposition to just the not terribly radical concept that she wants to live her life. You know, Roy says to her, I am innocent. And she says to him, I'm innocent too. And to keep all those things. But I believe that when I write a novel, I have to give everyone's point of view full consideration. I can't bring up any idea just to knock it down. If I bring up an idea, I have to follow it all the way. And the question is really about women and whether or not sexual loyalty is the ultimate expression of loyalty. Can you be loyal emotionally if you're not loyal sexually? Celestial and her dad are very close, but as someone once said to me, that the main strain on father-daughter relationships is when the daughter does not behave sexually the way that the father thinks. And many people think that if Celestial is a good person, then she will stand chastely by for the rest of her life to wait for Roy, if that's what happens. That anything other than rewarding him with chastity when he comes home is the ultimate betrayal. And that's, frankly, unreasonable.
Well, and also marriage defines a lot of what's happening in this book. And in some ways, it's an outdated institution for many people. It's not the be-all, end-all that it may have been a generation ago. I mean, Roy's mother marries his father, or his stepfather, I should say, and Roy Jr. ends up taking his name.
Yes, that he made me, Roy often says, and he married my mother and he made me his junior, which is also about legitimacy, respectability. And Celestial, that respectability, it works a lot better for men than for women. And Celestial she is from a background that I think is mannered and educated, all the things we associate with respectability, but she's an artist and she wants her life. I always say that Celestial wants the same thing that I want, that you want. She wants her life.
I have to say, I'm very, very partial to Celestial. She's not having it. And when she sort of snarks out, which she does, because she's human. I mean, she is not a saint. She is not meant to be a saint. I would hang with her. I would totally hang out with her. I would totally hang out with this woman.
I feel like this is kind of my litmus test of people.
Right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to say to someone, well, I understand what this marriage is supposed to be. I mean, that's like an American pastime, is to sit around and judge other people's marriages or try to sort of pick at them and figure out what's going on, which I find incredibly interesting as an intellectual exercise. But at the same time, it really is an American pastime to sit there and say,
yes,
well, I would, if I were in this, da-da-da-da-da. And it's never that simple.
Oh, what drives me bananas is when people say, did she truly love him? Did he truly love? Whenever I hear people say truly, I'm just like, stop it. There's no truly and untruly. It's just love is so many things at once. But I do feel like a lot of people, if they see any variable other than he makes my heart go pitter-pat, they're like, it wasn't true love.
Which is actually a really juvenile way. It's a juvenile interpretation of love is very complicated and messy.
Yes.
Marriage is complicated and
it
messy.
Involves a lot of things. But yeah, and that is the thing with Roy, Big Roy and Olive. Everyone's like, that was true love. But it also involved a woman organizing her entire life around her husband and son. She has no subplot.
No, she doesn't.
No,
oh, wow, she definitely does not.
That's all she does. But people read it and they're just like, oh my God, that was so beautiful. And as a person, I want a subplot.
There's so much humor in this book. I mean, Big Roy, I'm just thinking of this conversation that Big Roy has with Andre, which, I mean, It's a very somber, serious topic, and yet at the same time, he's really funny, and he's dad in a Barca lounger,
Yes.
lecturing this upstart, saying, well, you're not thinking about my kid.
Yeah,
You're not thinking about my kid. You are being selfish, and you're not thinking about my kid. And yet, I mean, there's jokes about not paying the phone bill and things of, I can't cook, my wife is gone. And it's a really gentle way of taking on a really difficult subject.
Also, I think that life is funny. Everyone's life is funny. I feel that if I were not to have included the humor in this book, I would be depriving the characters of their humanity.
Absolutely.
And people are more than their problems, And it's just kind of funny. Like, if you're in prison, that's not funny. You're wrongfully incarcerated, even less funny. You have a cellmate that is really attached to you, and he lets you know that he likes to be addressed as the ghetto Yoda. And when you call him the country Yoda, he gets offended. He's like, I'm not the country Yoda, I'm the ghetto Yoda. That's funny. Mm-hmm. And it's in prison. It's still funny. And I feel like life is just kind of funny. Andre's father is funny. Celestial's father, when he's setting out the Christmas decorations and he only wants the black wise men. So he buys 3 boxes of wise men and takes the black one out of each box. That's funny, and that's something my own father would do. So I feel like I just had to be open to the mirth of the situation. And also, it's just a gift to your reader, man. No reader wants to be in it for the slog. You want the full range.
Well, humor gives the reader a chance to breathe. I mean, otherwise we would all have just been sort of rocking ourselves. It
gives the writer a chance to breathe, too.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me a chance because my personality is... I have kind of a busy, kind of a flashing light personality in many ways. And with this topic, I did have to kind of restrain myself in it. And so the humor also allowed me to just play around and be myself.
Well, and there is one point, too, where Celestial is writing to her husband in jail and says, I wasn't expecting parades when I told you that. And it's a great line. I'm misquoting the line, but it's a terrific line that really did make me laugh out loud. I mean, here's this woman who's saying, hey, listen, I understand the severity of what's going on here, and I'm not asking for something outrageous. Because essentially what she's asking for is for him to understand her point of view. I mean, this is all she's trying to do is exchange an idea with someone who is dear to her.
I think that sometimes people ask me, what do I think is a takeaway of this novel? And I think it's right in what you're saying is that Roy's journey is the journey to empathy. I think that when he was in prison, he understood empathy as a luxury for other people, that he didn't have the luxury to think of anyone but himself because he's in this incredibly challenging situation. And he thinks that getting his life back is his journey to literally get his old life back, get his house back, get his wife back, get his car back, get his job back. But I think that what he comes to learn is that getting your life back is reclaiming your ability to empathize with other people.
I want to go back to Silver Sparrow for a second. This is your novel from 2011. It was nominated for an NAACP Image Award in the category of Outstanding Literary Work Fiction, and the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, added Silver Sparrow to its Big Read Library of Classics in 2016. This novel also has one of the best opening lines in literature ever. My father, James Witherspoon, is a bigamist. I mean, that is possibly the best line I have read. 2 wives, 2 daughters, 1 public family, one hidden family. Where did Silver Sparrow start for you?
Well, my father, Mac Jones, is not a bigamist, but
good to know.
But I have 2 sisters who were born before my parents ever met, and we had completely different lives. And so I've always felt like I had a sister and I didn't have a sister at the same time. It was almost like I had sisters that lived in my peripheral vision, and when I turned my head, there was no one there. And this has plagued me my entire life. So I kind of wrote this novel, the idea of 2 sisters, same father, different lives. That is really, I feel like, the question of my life for all of my life. And I feel that when I wrote Silver Sparrow and wrote from the point of view of the secret daughter and the public daughter, I feel like I put that to bed finally, that I came to a kind of closure on that, because I feel like with Silver Sparrow, I realized that our own lives are because of our own choices. That yes, we are each and every one of us born into our parents' drama, but it's up to us if we want to heal it. It can be healed.
And what's that line you had about? I think you said this in an interview. Our parents' stories are the first propaganda stories we hear, like the story.
Our parents' courtship story.
That's what it is.
Is our first exposure to propaganda.
That's such a great line. That is such a great line. I was really rooting actually for the daughters. I thought the parents were all kind of scoundrelly in Silver Sparrow, but I mean, all well-intentioned. I should say, Laverne, the mothers were all well-intentioned. I had an issue with James a little bit. He had some moments where I was just like, dude, what are you doing?
I mean, I do think just as in An American Marriage, what we realize with the husbands and fathers in both these stories is that they are well-intentioned, but they also have never really thought that much about other people. Like in An American Marriage, people say, oh, I think Celestial is selfish. And I say, is Roy selfish? No one had ever given 2 seconds of thought about what Roy should do for her. The entire conflict is on what she should do for him. And I feel like even in Silver Sparrow, the bigamist, he feels like every time a woman has said she's having my baby, I have married her. I have left no one unmarried. I'm a good person. Did you see that I left no one unmarried? What more do you want from me? Because he has never really considered other people's feelings in a meaningful way.
Can we talk about Atlanta for a second? This
Of
is your
course.
4th book set in Atlanta.
My natural habitat.
You have not lived in Atlanta in quite some time, though. So why do you keep coming back to it?
Because I haven't lived there in quite some
Okay.
time. I miss
Okay.
it. I feel like every novel I write is a love letter to my hometown. And also, I do feel that the urban South is underrepresented. I always think that,
it is.
I think that people think about the South. I was talking to the writer Mark Childress, and he said, when people think about us, they just think about grandmothers and mules. And, you know, there's not a mule in here, and I don't even think there's a grandmother in this book. It was just important to me that the South is a modern place. We have modern problems and modern observations. I live in Brooklyn, and I have to say that when I tell people up here that I'm from Georgia, they act like that I came to Brooklyn on the Underground Railroad, because they just think the South is this alien, un-American place. So people often point out the irony of the title An American Marriage because the characters are Black, but also I am representing the South as a distinctly American space.
You're an associate professor at the MFA program at Rutgers Newark University. And it is a relatively new program, but you teach with Jane Ann Phillips, among other folks. What have you learned from your students?
You know, what I've learned from my students remind me, one, of how hard it is to write a book, but also how much fun it is to write a book. I just adore them. And when I teach, I can watch the story grow from just a little tiniest thing into a full book often. And they encourage me. Some people say that teaching drains their writing, but students inspire me. And I also feel like I have to set an example for them. There was a time with An American Marriage when I was ready to walk away from it because I couldn't finish it.
Oh, really?
But I couldn't face my students having walked away because I'm always telling them, keep going, believe in it, believe in yourself. So how could I walk away and then face them? So they keep me honest.
Where
really.
were you in the process when you thought you were going to walk away from this?
50 pages from the end.
Oh, that was really, oh, wow. Because it's a killer ending. I should say it's a great ending.
I could not figure it out. I thought that maybe I wasn't up to it, that I had bitten off more than I could chew, and I just had to walk away. And I was even saving money to repay the advance for the book. And my editor lives literally like 7 houses down, and I would see her and I would hide. I'd be in a grocery store and I would see her and I would like press myself against the freezers, and I could hear her children saying, "But Mommy, I just saw her. I saw her." But I was so ashamed. But it was for my students that I kept trying because they look to me for an example, and I am their mentor, and I take it very seriously.
How long did it take you then to figure out the ending?
A year. That's a long time.
It is a long time because it feels very organic. When you read it, it feels very organic and very inevitable. That there was no other way this book was going to end.
It was really, really hard because the characters were just in such distress. Mm-hmm. And I had maybe a day. The last 50 pages of the book takes place over about 48 hours.
Right.
So there was a lot that had to get done in such a short period of time. And I just didn't know what was best. And I felt like a mother. I did not want to play favorites among the three of them. And I had to really figure out how I could make a home for them on the page, in my heart, in the story.
Is there a book you didn't connect with or even disliked when you were younger that you came to love as an adult?
When I was in college, I love Toni Morrison now, almost obsessively. I probably need to seek some help. But
No. What? No.
I have some dirt from her hometown in a little jar on my desk.
People have done weirder things. I'm sorry. That is just not enough to
Okay.
do. That is not enough.
Okay, great. I won't tell you about the time. Well, never
No.
mind. But when I was in college, I read Tar Baby, and I didn't like it. And it had a similar conflict to the conflict in American Marriage. As a matter of fact, the working class love interest from the small town, his small town is called Elo, and I borrowed it just as a little shout out, and so that if my teacher ever sees it, she'll know that I see her point. But the woman is from a more sophisticated background. She's a model, no less. And she's in a relationship with this man from a completely different background, and she wants her life. And as a teenager, I felt like she's so selfish because I didn't know yet what it was to want your life. As a very young reader, I wanted that love story. I wanted things to work out between the two of them. I had never considered her ambition as a meaningful thing to be nurtured. And in many ways, writing this book is my apology to Dr. Gales from my sophomore English class, who was trying to explain this to us. And she said to us, "You'll get it when you're older." And I would like her to know, wherever you are, Dr. Gales, I'm older and I get it.
Tayari Jones is the author of An American Marriage, out from Algonquin Books of Chapel Hill. Thank you very, very much, Tayari, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to our conversation with Tayari Jones. To learn more about An American Marriage, visit barnesandnoble.com/podcast. We've got new episodes with more fascinating voices every week. To make sure you don't miss out, subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our interviewer today is Miwa Messer. This episode was produced by Bill Tipper with editing and engineering by Josh Perillo. Our executive producer is Jim Mustick.
Barnes & Noble Audio.